Chapter 11 of Ruth. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Cynthia Lyons. Ruth by Elizabeth Cleghorn Gaskell. Chapter 11. Thurstan and Faith Benson. You have now seen the note which was delivered into Mr. Benson's hands as the cool shades of evening stole over the glowing summer sky. When he had read it, he again prepared to write a few hasty lines before the post went out. The post-boy was even now sounding his horn through the village as a signal for letters to be ready, and it was well that Mr. Benson, in his long morning's meditation, had decided upon the course to be pursued, in case of such an answer as that which he had received from Mrs. Bellingham. His present note was as follows: "Dear Faith, you must come to this place directly, where I earnestly desire you and your advice. I am well myself, so do not be alarmed. I have no time for explanation, but I am sure you will not refuse me. Let me trust that I shall see you on Saturday at the latest. You know the mode by which I came. It is the best, both for expedition and cheapness. Dear Faith, do not fail me. Your affectionate brother, Thurstan Benson. P.S. I am afraid the money I left may be running short. Do not let this stop you. Take my Facciolati to Johnson's. He will advance upon it. It is the third row, bottom shelf. Only come." When this letter was dispatched, he had done all he could, and the next 2 days passed like a long monotonous dream of watching, thought, and care, undisturbed by any event, hardly by the change from day to night, which, now the harvest moon was at her full, was scarcely perceptible. On Saturday morning the answer came: "Dearest Thurstan, your incomprehensible summons has just reached me, and I obey, there proving my right to my name of Faith. I shall be with you almost as soon as this letter. I cannot help feeling anxious as well as curious. I have money enough, and it is well I have, for Sally, who guards your room like a dragon, would rather see me walk the whole way than have any of your things disturbed. Your affectionate sister." It was a great relief to Mr. Benson to think that his sister would so soon be with him. He had been accustomed from childhood to rely on her prompt judgment and excellent sense, and to her care he felt that Ruth ought to be consigned, as it was too much to go on taxing good Mrs. Hughes with night watching and sick nursing, with all her other claims on her time. He asked her once more to sit by Ruth while he went to meet his sister. The coach passed by the foot of the steep ascent which led up to Llandau. He took a boy to carry his sister's luggage when they arrived. They were too soon at the bottom of the hill, and the boy began to make ducks and drakes in the shallowest part of the stream, which there flowed glassy and smooth, while Mr. Benson sat down on a great stone, under the shadow of an alder bush which grew where the green flat meadows skirted the water. It was delightful to be once more in the open air, and away from the scenes and thoughts which had been pressing on him for the last 3 days. There was a new beauty in everything, from the blue mountains which glimmered in the distant sunlight, down to the flat, rich, peaceful vale, with its calm round shadows, where he sat. The very margin of white pebbles which lay on the banks of the stream had a sort of cleanly beauty about it. He felt calmer and more at ease than he had done for some days, and yet, when he began to think, it was rather a strange story which he had to tell his sister, in order to account for his urgent summons. Here was he, sole friend and guardian of a poor sick girl, whose very name he did not know, about whom all that he did know was that she had been the mistress of a man who had deserted her, and that she feared, he believed, she had contemplated suicide. The offence, too, was one for which his sister, good and kind as she was, had little compassion. Well, he must appeal to her love for him, which was a very unsatisfactory mode of proceeding, as he would far rather have had her interest in the girl founded on reason, or some less personal basis, than showing it merely because her brother wished it. The coach came slowly rumbling over the stony road. His sister was outside, but got down in a brisk, active way, and greeted her brother heartily and affectionately. She was considerably taller than he was, and must have been very handsome. Her black hair was parted plainly over her forehead, and her dark, expressive eyes and straight nose still retained the beauty of her youth. I do not know whether she was older than her brother, but probably, owing to his infirmity requiring her care, she had something of a mother's manner towards him. "Thurstan, you are looking pale. I do not believe you are well, whatever you may say. Have you had the old pain in your back?" "No, a little. Never mind that, dearest Faith. Sit down here, while I send the boy up with your box." And then, with some little desire to show his sister how well he was acquainted with the language, he blundered out his directions in a very grammatical Welsh, so grammatical, in fact, and so badly pronounced, that the boy, scratching his head, made answer, "Dim Saesoneg." So he had to repeat it in English. "Well now, Thurstan, here I sit as you bid me, but don't try me too long. Tell me why you sent for me." Now came the difficulty, and oh, for a seraph's tongue and a seraph's power of representation! But there was no seraph at hand, only the soft running waters singing a quiet tune, and predisposing Miss Benson to listen with a soothed spirit to any tale, not immediately involving her brother's welfare, which had been the cause of her seeing that lovely vale. "It is an awkward story to tell, Faith, but there is a young woman lying ill at my lodgings, whom I wanted you to nurse." He thought he saw a shadow on his sister's face, and detected a slight change in her voice as she spoke. "Nothing very romantic, I hope, Thurstan. Remember, I cannot stand much romance. I always distrust it." "I don't know what you mean by romance. The story is real enough, and not out of the common way, I'm afraid." He paused. He did not get over the difficulty. "Well, tell it me at once, Thurstan. I am afraid you have let someone, or perhaps only your own imagination, impose upon you. But don't try my patience too much. You know, I've no great stock." "Then I'll tell you. The young girl was brought to the inn here by a gentleman, who has left her. She is very ill, and has no one to see after her." Miss Benson had some masculine tricks, and one was whistling a long, low whistle when surprised or displeased. She had often found it a useful vent for feelings, and she whistled now. Her brother would rather she had spoken. "Have you sent for her friends?" she asked at last. "She has none." Another pause, and another whistle, but rather softer and more wavering than the last. "How is she ill?" "Pretty nearly as quiet as if she were dead. She does not speak, or move, or even sigh." "It would be better for her to die at once, I think." "Faith!" That one word put them right. It was spoken in the tone which had authority over her. It was so full of grieved surprise and mournful upbraiding. She was accustomed to exercise a sway over him, owing to her greater decision of character, and probably, if everything were traced to its cause, to her superior vigour of constitution; but at times she was humbled before his pure childlike nature, and felt where she was inferior. She was too good and true to conceal this feeling,